What's up, legends, and welcome back to another designer interview. It's been a hot second since the last one I did for the Genie Dini set, but here we are for Sun's Origins, and I got a chance to sit down with the designer of Tomoe Gozen, aka Paladin Scythe, aka Jason Viddal, and kind of unpack his thoughts about the whole design process for Tomoe and just the journey it's been from the initial design contest entry to where it is now as the newest published released fighter. So please enjoy the following interview. It was amazing to get to talk to Jason. And again, Jason, thank you so much for giving up an hour of your time to just sit down and talk to some random cow on the internet. Thank you to Restoration Games for sending me a early copy of the Sun's Origin set, although they had to send a second one because the first one vanished like Houdini. So that's why this interview is coming out a little bit after the release. And again, thank you to all of the people who support me on Patreon. Their names will be on the screen in just a second. So with all of that good stuff out of the way, please enjoy the following designer interview. So I'm here with Jason, the designer of Tomoe. Jason, how are you doing today?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm living the dream. I get to talk about Unmatched with someone who helped design it for the next hour, so couldn't have a better Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, I'm still riding the high from the set being revealed on the 10th. Just like, all right, it's finally here. I can finally talk about this.
Yeah, because when did you submit the original design for this? Was this like 2 or 3 years ago at this
The
point?
the original the contest was in 2020,
Okay.
and not too long after that, we did the development, and the set itself was kind of pencils down as far as the design went in late mid to late 2021.
So you've been
So
sitting
yeah,
on this
been
for a
sitting
while.
for 2 years, waiting for things to come through,
Well,
and
perfect.
waiting for her to get her chance at the schedule. Yeah.
hmm Well, I'm glad that you finally get to kind of not keep that secret anymore. Um, for those who might not know Jason, which is probably almost everyone, I guess, would you just like to introduce yourself? Just tell us about yourself, who you are.
Sure. I'm Jason Viddal. I live in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. For work, I do software development, and I just play lots of video games, play lots of different board games. Been playing and collecting for years and years. uh, and just love the board gaming community. Got into Unmatched really when Bruce Lee came out. I had been looking at the game because I played Tannhauser before, and that's where they got the line of sight system from. So that got me to give it a look. But as soon as Bruce Lee came in, I was like, oh, I got to play this. So picked it up, started playing it with my friends, and really just enjoyed how smooth it is, how easy it is to get into, and that it doesn't take 3 hours like some skirmish games do. Which, don't get me wrong, 3 hour skirmish games are still fun, but sometimes you want to play something that you can get a few games in an afternoon and run a mini tournament or whatever. So it's um, really enjoyed that, playing it, and then the design contest came up, and I always have fun with stuff like that, so figured might as well submit a couple entries. Tomoe was one of them, and here we are.
What were some of the other entries you submitted for the contest?
I worked on quite a few different ones, and a couple of my friends helped me play test and distill them down to figure out who to send in. So the other one that I submitted was Gilgamesh and Enkidu from the super ancient story,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an attempt to do kind of because they meet and the first thing they do is wrestle with each other. It was kind of tried to be a tag team wrestling kind of deck where you would have a lot of space swapping and effects that triggered off of space swapping with your friends or friendlies or with people with opposing. Wasn't the best. I asked Justin after if he sort of remembered anything about the deck and why it didn't make it through, and he just said it was good enough, but it just didn't really have anything that made it stand out, right? Like I didn't go loud enough with it. I didn't have people jumping off of top ropes or yelling things at each other. It was the way that I took it. I had a few other ones that kind of stayed on the drawing board. I did a deck for John Henry with Casey Jones as his sidekick, both dealing with the railway. My father and my grandfather both worked for the railway up here in Canada, so got kind of that background in the family. So the stories about and legends about these real people or characters from the history of the railroad in the United States and Canada always kind of, it gives me more interest in them because my family has that background. So I wanted to try and do that. It didn't quite work out, so I didn't submit that one. I also had Khepri, who is an Egyptian god. He's one of the three aspects of Ra, the sun god. He's a man with a scarab beetle for a head. And at night, it's his job to push the sun through the underworld so that it can come up again in the morning. So the whole shtick was that he's basically a giant scarab running around, and instead of a ball of dung, he's got the sun, and he's rolling the sun over you and all this kind of thing.
That would have been a cool mini.
That one too, it was too complicated for me to be able to make it work. I did another version later that it's okay. It's one of the fan decks that I actually made and printed out for myself. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit better. I kind of crossed it up with basketball. So like he's got the sun and the opponent can steal it and they get benefits. You become ranged and you get +1 attack if you have the sun. And if you lose a combat while you have it, then whoever won the combat gets to take it from you. And it's really just this feel of like reverse hot potato or basketball. And it's fun, but it's way too complicated for something that you would want to print and have the public be playing. But my friends all know my jank rulings around it, so it's okay.
Wow.
So that was about it.
Yeah, you clearly have like a lot of like you spent a lot of time like thinking about.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I board gaming is pretty much my main hobby. Well, swapping back and forth between board and video games. Mm-hmm. So when the contest was on, I had just sort of been getting into the game, so I was really in the mood to be playing it a lot, thinking about it a lot, analyzing the decks, and coming up with all these things. So I was fortunate to have a little bit of time outside of work too. I have a lot going on schedule wise usually, and it was just lucky that I had time to make a few decks, play rounds with a few of them, and get my friends together, and that they would help me out with refining some of the ideas and bouncing some of the things off of them. So yeah, it was good.
Well, your ideas, like after like just getting into the game, are probably better than anything I could have come up with when I like just started playing Unmatched.
Well, this one, okay, I in the Discord I posted what I submitted for her deck. It looks almost nothing like what you have on the screen right now. and other people have commented she was actually a mill character to start with. Mm-hmm. And potentially worse than Black Panther as far as mill goes.
Oh, jeez.
But like one of my friends, we played a lot of Magic the Gathering, and he loves mill. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make you a mill character. And I couldn't figure out the remaining theme elements I wanted for Tomoe at the time. So I'm like, all right, she can be the mill character. So it was her special at the time was after a combat, if your boost value matched the opponent's boost value, they discard the top card of their deck. So
Okay.
potentially every combat had a chance to mill cards off your opponent. And then Witness My Last Battle was a 4 value. You still had to play it against an adjacent opponent, but you could only play it against somebody who was exhausted. And it made you discard your deck, and then you got +1 attack on it for every card that was in your deck that you discarded.
In your deck.
In yours. So you hit an exhausted opponent, you exhaust yourself and get an attack bonus based on how many cards, like how well you did in exhaustion, right?
Oh my
So I had no
goodness.
clue. Like it was really early in the game. I don't even think like BOL2 wasn't even out. The Marvel stuff was still in playtest at that time.
Mhm.
So we had up to Red versus Bayo, and the online tournament community hadn't really started up. There wasn't even an official event yet.
Yeah.
So I had no, like, exhaustion was just something to keep the game from going too long.
Mhm.
And I didn't even think about it as a actual, how does this work? What's the whole idea of deck advantage and all that. So I just said, okay, well, this seems cool. Discard your deck and smash them really hard, right?
No, that sounds
Um,
amazing. Like that's so awesome.
it's it was fun, but now that I've looked a little bit deeper and we've gone through all this process, and I had a chance to interact with all the people from Restoration Games, and really think about it, and watch the community, right? Watch the competitive play develop. Watch all of these all the different strategies that people have come up with for the different characters, matchup evaluations. That it's I look back at the deck and I say, like, okay, this was me as kind of, this is my infant understanding of how the game actually plays, which for a lot of the time as a designer, you don't even really know when it first gets out there how people are going to receive it and how they're going to interact with it. And it's just really telling to me, having been involved in this now. It's like, yeah, this is really how it goes. You make something originally and think this is the way that it could be played or should be
Mhm.
played, and then people come along who are really invested and really know how all the things that already exist in the game interact, and they'll just turn your design right on its head.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was certainly a process, and yeah, looking back makes me completely aware of just where I was at that point, and where it got to, and the amount of um, that collaboration with other people really helps, right? Like having that feedback from Restoration, having that feedback of watching people streaming games, watching people playing games online, talking about it all the time. The community really made it possible to refine some of those ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, the community is one of the reasons why I love this game so much. It's
Mm-hmm.
such I think it's like an integral part of the game now. At least for
It
me.
is. I agree. At least, I mean, for what I see from it, and like the interactions that people have on there, on the Discord and elsewhere. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm. So you said this started off as a mill deck. When you were making
Yes.
this, did you have the character in mind first? Did you come up with the like deck mechanics and then go, "Oh, Tomoe would be
So
a
I
perfect fit for this."
so I guess yeah. So for the kind of the history of me and my relationship to the character, um, first I first read the when I first read the Tale of the Heike, which is the story that she appears in. Um, her she's got a very short section in there, but very striking. She only appears for a little while, a few pages, but it just left a huge impression on me. And kind of long story short, Lord Kiso, who is mentioned on one of the cards, is her husband slash commander. The husband part, it depends on the translation. The whole thing is it was passed down orally, so there are some variations and different translations of things. But um, anyway, he's an ambitious guy, and he eventually gets in over his head and starts a fight that he can't win. One of his cousins betrays him and then shows up with his army siding with the person who's fighting Lord Kiso already. Eventually, it comes down to just him, Tomoe, and um, three of his other high-ranking officers, and he's kind of sitting there like, okay, well, I know we're all gonna die, so he says to Tomoe, hey, I'd be embarrassed to die with a woman, so you should run. And she just kind of sits there like, no, I'm going to do my job and I'm going to kill somebody before I listen to what you tell me to do. So she rolls out, finds some big general on the other side who's known for his strength, rides through his 30 soldiers that are with him, grabs him, pulls him off his horse, and depending on which translation you read, either she cuts his head off like he wasn't resisting at all, or she rips it off with her bare hands, throws it away, and then says, "Okay, I did my thing, I did my duty, and now I'll follow your order." And she runs off, and then everyone else gets killed. If she had stayed, maybe they would have lived. Who knows? Uh, what happens after that, which I didn't know until later. That's as far as the story goes in the book as it's translated. But there are there's a lot of folklore about what might happen to her next. Some stories say she went and she became a nun. Other stories say that she came back, found the people who killed Lord Kiso, uh, killed her way through all their men, took his decapitated head back, and walked into the sea with it so that nobody would be able to get their hands on it and claim that they killed him. So depending on what you like, I mean, still kind of a total badass warrior lady here. So anyway,
Sure.
it just really struck me that you had this, for me at the time, a female character who was treated in a way that you didn't really hear female characters being portrayed in American and European media, right? Uh, she's never really talked about. They basically have one line about like, yes, she was pretty, and then the next 10 lines are like, and she can use a sword, and she can ride the wildest horse, and she's the best archer, and she's this, and it's all really about her and what she's achieved, how strong she is, and for me that really struck a chord because um, all the ladies that I know, they get things done, right? Like they're in there, they're doing stuff. They don't sit back and just take it easy or anything. Everyone's working, and everyone's trying to do their best, and really that resonated with me a lot more than some of the stories about damsel in distress waiting in the castle for someone to come and get them. Um, I had nothing against people who enjoy those kinds of stories. Obviously, those are that's got its place too. But for me, this was kind of far more real in terms of something that you might be reading in fiction, and it really struck a chord. So from that point, she kind of stuck with me as a character, despite the fact that she has such a small part in the book, and more so than almost anybody else in the entire story. Um, I've kind of had the same feeling playing Metroid for the Nintendo when you get to close to the end of the game and you've had this bounty hunter you're playing the whole time, and then she takes her helmet off, and it's a girl who's been beating the crap out of all these aliens and kicking the snot out of these bosses, and you're like, well, hell yeah, of course she could do that, right? Um, so from there, when the contest came up, she's kind of foremost in my mind about who do I need to try and include. So I made sure she had to be one of the two that I was going to bring in. The other ones were I had a short list, right? And they could come or they could go, but I knew she had to be one of the ones to bring in there. So thinking about her whole idea of searching for a worthy opponent for her final battle really informed a lot of the part of the theme of the deck. So she started off with my original submission as a character who was strong against heroes, weak against sidekicks. Because who cares about sidekicks?
Exactly.
You don't win the game for killing them. You're not going to gain any renown for beating up Watson.
No.
You get a name for yourself by beating up Sherlock. So cards that are in general worse when you play them against sidekicks, or just ignore them in some cases to encourage that feeling of like, you're beneath me, I'm not going to bother with you. Then I was trying to find another theme to go with, and that was one of my friends loved mill decks, so I said, okay, well let's try making her a mill character. I also thought boost value matching to me seemed like something where you could really get into the analysis of your deck, knowledge of your opponent's deck. What are the cards they could play in this situation? What are the cards they've already played? How do the boost values line up? And it's a little less granular than card value, because you're dealing with values between 1 and 4, maybe 1 and 3 a lot of the time for boost values. So it's not quite as wide a range. So I thought, here's something where someone can maybe express knowledge and skill, and try to do it that way. So that's really sort of how I came to having her added there. And I went through the story about 500 times and just picked out a big list of all the best lines of like what cards have to be in there. Which of these things do I need to put in? And that's where you get, witness my last battle. Obviously, that's the big one. Confront any demon or god is from there. A worthy opponent, or in some translations, a worthy foe, is in there. And then some of the others were just, I like Robin Hood, so let's put in Piercing Shot. So Piercing Shot was in the deck. Skirmish is my absolute favorite common card, so let's put Skirmish in. Because
what about Regroup?
Regroup is good too.
That's my favorite comic card.
It's good. I mean, it's a lot of fun to, especially for faking somebody out. It's like, here, have a regroup. Like, what did you just play your 5 defense? Yeah, good job. So at the time, that was kind of the state of what I enjoyed about the game. I did give her the feint that doesn't work against sidekicks.
Only works on heroes.
It was a little bit different at that time, but and it had a different name. Some of the card names, I originally had some anglicized Japanese for them. So I had like Anamusha, which is woman warrior, which is kind of what they would have called her. I had one that was Cuba no Michi, which is the way of the horse and bow. So horse riding archery. And while we were doing the development of the set, Restoration was in contact with their cultural consultant, Saigo, and he had some suggestions about the card titles, and saying, if you want to have Japanese card titles, then maybe we should have either, really the way to do it is to have the whole deck in Japanese, or just have the whole deck in English. And you don't really want to do kind of give it sort of a Western Orientalism feel, where you're like, I'm including this Japanese word just because it's cool and it sounds exotic, right? Yeah. For me, it's the Japanese have these shorter terms for bigger things than English is capable of doing. Like if I wanted to say the way of the horse and the bow, that's a lot of letters. So being an engineer, I'm just like, this is the more succinct way to do it, so we're gonna do it that way.
Problem solving.
And didn't really think about the cultural aspect of it, and so he came back, and they weren't gonna change all of the names to Japanese, which I would love to live in the alternate universe where that deck appears, and I would love to have a copy of it. But so they changed those back over to English names, and he provided some good ones as alternates. So A Warrior's Way came from his suggestion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One thing I was gonna say earlier was I know Restoration previously said that like they want to include kind of like an equal number of both men and women in Unmatched because of all like the famous
Mm-hmm.
fighters in history. They're not all men, but
Yeah,
they didn't want to kind of reduce including women to kind of like the stereotypes of like I think it's like witches,
yeah,
princesses, and children, something like that. And
yeah,
yeah, I think
exactly.
Tomoe is like a perfect case for a
Mm-hmm.
powerful, badass woman that I think is
Well, and
perfect for this game.
yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. That and I think I was never told specifically, but I think that might be part of the reason. What one of many reasons that they did mention later that why she was chosen. That here's somebody who's just a total badass. You don't need to change the story.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to take a new spin on them. And don't get me wrong, I love Alice. I love Red. I love what they did with them. The treatments are awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just so great. But to have a character that like that you don't actually have to change bits and pieces, and that
Yeah.
people who know them will be familiar with it and say, yeah, this is exactly the character that I know. It's really nice to be able to do that and show people that these things did exist. Like the story itself is from the 11th century, which I mean, you'd consider that pretty progressive by modern standards, or at least standards from 20 years ago, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
But yeah,
so,
like
yeah.
exactly. There's no abstraction. She is a warrior, and
Mhm.
she's gonna kick your ass.
Yeah, exactly.
So what were your first thoughts or your reaction when you found out that you actually like were I know you didn't like win the contest, but you were one of like the 8
Mhm.
runner ups that they chose. Like
Yeah,
what
one of the runners up.
yeah, what happened after that? I know it's like a
You'd
big
have to
question.
ask my wife. I probably like was running around the house screaming like a little kid. um, like there were kind of stages to it, right? Like they had finalists where they cut it
Mm-hmm.
down to about 30 decks first, or some number like that. So I got the message. I got the email that Tomoe had been chosen as one of the finalists, and that they were going to do some playoff and some more internal judging about who made it to the end. So of course there I'm like
Mm-hmm.
for however many weeks it was, like what's going on? Well, at least I made it there. And then yeah, I finally got the email to say you're you're a runner up, and this is the character we want to use, and we're going to set up a Zoom meeting where we can talk with you and with the other runners up and the other winners, and just really go over what we like about your decks, what we want to change. And yeah, it just blew my mind, right? Like the fact that I was going to be able to get to interact with with the people from Restoration, with Rob Davio, and with Noah and Brian and Justin, and even to just be sitting there on the other side of a call and listening to them, and especially Rob, right? He's legendary in the board game industry,
Yeah.
really. So to be able to listen to what he had to say about what my design was was just that in itself was kind of a contest prize,
Mm-hmm.
really. Um, so we had the call, and it was really cool. And Rob did a big presentation, had slides, and told us all, this is these are the points that we liked about your characters. Here's what we think could improve. Here are the things we think you can remove. And mine was like, yeah, mill character, no, no, no. But and boost matching, nah, not so much. But they really liked this idea of this character who was strong against heroes, weak against sidekicks, and ignored sidekicks, and thought that would make for some compelling gameplay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so we got, those of us who wanted to got the opportunity to take that feedback and do development on redevelop our decks over a course of a few weeks. And I had time. I was actually coming up on 2 weeks off from work. No real reason, just needed to burn vacation. So it all lined up. So I spent that time sitting there in the Discord with the people from Restoration and throwing out probably way too many iterations of decks with different special abilities and completely different card versions and everything like that. I don't know how many I went through, but I probably spammed things in there way more than I needed to, and that. But I mean, everyone was really helpful. Like Justin, Noah, and Brian were on the Discord channel that we were in, and they always had good feedback for us on the design changes that we made and if we were having some trouble. And it was a really collaborative process there. So that was just fantastic. All the contest winners and runners up, we all bounced ideas off each other too, and worked together. We played test games of each other's characters, especially inside of the set. They encouraged us to talk with the people who were working on the same set as you, to try and get that inbox matchup, to have some real fun and real good interaction. And as Zach will tell you, he was unfortunately unable to participate in that, but I still used his original submission as kind of a test bed for some of Tomoe's stuff. And a few of the effects on some of the cards, like Fearsome Strength and Warrior's Way, in particular, came from those test plays against Oda, who, as you may know, is kind of the king of making other fighters better. So he's got these two beefy sidekicks, right?
Yeah.
And so my design is I ignore sidekicks and I'm weak against them. And his design is my sidekicks are totally badass and they're going to squish you. Here's my goon squad. So really had to give her some subtle tools to try and deal with those situations without kind of breaking that character that we wanted, where she wasn't always dealing with sidekicks in a direct way. So yeah, that's where kind of the swap in on Fearsome Strength came from, so that she could push past somebody or get out of the pin while not necessarily killing somebody or doing it in a more overt way. Or she could swap spaces with a sidekick who was protecting a hero to get in, maybe put herself in a pin if she thinks she can finish him off. And then a Warrior's Way is a method of just taking a hero away from a place where they're protected and jumping up next to them, right? It's a kind of ranged attack as a delivery method for your fighter sort of idea.
Yeah.
So yeah, all that was it was a really great time, a lot of fun, and really got a lot of contributions from everybody, a little bit of everybody who was involved in the contest, and everybody at Restoration too really lives in this deck. Like the feedback, the ideas, and all that was really collaborative. The special ability in particular, I was having a hard time settling on one that actually worked. And so we were spitballing things, and Justin said, well, why don't you just, what if she dealt 1 damage to somebody when they left her zone? Like, oh,
he just like said
works.
That like all casual.
Yeah, he just said that, and he says, I'm just spitballing here. How about this? and then I looked at him like, yeah, I'll try it. Then I started looking at the deck like, wow, yeah, that synergizes with skirmish. It brings skirmish in a whole different light, right?
Yeah.
You're not just kicking them out of the zone or gaining positioning advantage. You can do damage with it now, and it really kind of brought the whole deck together and gave it a bit more of an idea of what she was doing. Because now it's like, yeah, if you run away, I'm going to put an arrow in your behind. So don't run away.
Yeah.
Fight me.
it fits so perfectly. It's like she's gonna stand and fight if you run away. you'll take a damage, and
Mm-hmm.
the ways that she can also like manipulate her opponent's movement to make them take that damage,
Mm-hmm.
for her from her like
Yeah, and
attack range.
I
It's
like that
amazing.
it. I like too that. I mean, the way that I've played it, and maybe this won't line up with the way that people wind up playing her in competitive, but I find in a lot of times that she winds up, as a result of that, she winds up liking spaces with fewer zones more than spaces that are multi-zone, which is kind of different for a range fighter, right?
Yeah.
Normally you want as much coverage as possible, but you can maximize the potential for your ability by restricting the number of zones you're in so that your opponent's movements are also restricted. Um, and we'll see if it actually turns out to be that way. But that's kind of how I've played her through the periods that I have been, um, and putting a lot of adjacency effects on her too, right? So you're not this
Yes.
range character who's just saying, "I want to ping you from way over here," and nah, she wants to get up in your face. She'll shoot you from far away if she has to,
Hmm.
but she really wants to be up in your grill and knocking your teeth out.
Yeah, I love how. Uh, what did you say earlier? It's the warrior of the horse and the bow.
The way of the horse and
The way
bow,
of the
yeah,
horse and
that was
bow.
a warrior's way
Hmm.
before.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's like this duality with her where she has
Hmm.
prowess from range, but she's also like a skilled close combat warrior. And
Yeah.
that definitely shows up in some of her cards where it's like you can only play her best attack if she's right next to you. Like the
Hmm.
5 against 1,000 card, you can only get it back if she's adjacent, and like
Yeah.
refuse to retreat also has adjacency. So like I love that you kind of you've made a ranged character that has a reason to want to get into like a melee combat with someone. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. That's I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's a lot of the feedback that I've gotten too. Is that especially Biscuits, the
Mm-hmm.
number one Sun's Origin hype man there. That was his first set of comments too. It's like it's a range character, but they want to be adjacent. This is fantastic.
Yes. I know some people have kind of like gripes about how like range is kind of just melee, but like strictly better. And I love how you
Hmm.
kind of like incorporated a way for a ranged character to feel very different from other ranged characters.
Hmm. Yeah, and it was especially important as a solo too,
Mm-hmm.
to give you that variation in gameplay, because normally the big positional element for a lot of fighters comes from board presence of them, board presence of the sidekick, and using those to kind of cut off avenues of escape or to like pinning, corralling, all that kind of thing. So she needed some reason to move around, some reason to transition from positions that rather than just kind of camp in a good sniping spot and say, yeah, you come here and let me shoot you. Uh,
So I will probably get some negative comments if I don't ask you about this, but an attack value with a printed value of 7.
yes,
What were
yes.
you thinking?
Well, I can put this one firmly on restoration to start with.
Uh-huh.
Not to say that it's a bad thing. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so that that card in the original submission
Mm-hmm.
was just a 4, and then like I said, you discard your deck and you get plus value as long as your opponent was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they did some tweaks internally when they were doing their play testing with the 30 finalists, and they returned those tweaks to us as some ideas that
Mm-hmm.
we could use for the start of the character. So when they returned that attack to me, because they said mill, you don't want an
Mill.
exhaustion character,
Okay.
you don't want a mill character, it was printed 8 value, play this card face up with the restrictions that were listed there,
Printed 8?
and 8. And I kept it after development. I put it back. I put it in. It actually stayed that way all the way through the wide playtesting, and I guess as a result of the data that they got there, they reduced it to a 7. So and I had conversations with Brian every once in a while. I was just like, I can't believe that the 8's still in there. He's like, well, it seems to be doing okay for now. We'd like to see it come through if it can, but I mean, if it has to go, it has to go, right? And then yeah, the final version when they sent it to focus test, the competitive focus group, it had been reduced to a 7, and her health had been reduced from 16 down to 14. Because she had, I guess, 22 total healing if you counted her 3 copies of the scheme, or 22 total health. And she has some pretty beefy defenses if you want to use them, her versatiles for defense. So yeah, it totally made sense. But yeah, it was a print 8 for a while, and I got a few some of the playtesters who kind of knew about that stuff. They're like, oh hey, print 8, huh? Like, yeah. But at the end of the day, like it made her, well, it was 1 point of damage weaker against Bayo, because in those days we were still, when you died, when you were defeated, you're dead, and that's it. The game ends, right? So witnessed my last battle into Equal of Grendel.
Yeah.
He's ripping your arm off and feeding it to you, and game over. But it also, I think, probably was not that great for the idea of opposing characters who have lower defenses, like somebody like Robin Hood, right?
Yeah.
He does rely on his outlaws to take hits for him, but if you have a printed 8 against somebody who's just got 3 defenses across the board, you're smacking them for 5 guaranteed, and that is a huge chunk of health. Not that 4 isn't, but 4 is a little bit better.
Yeah.
And we had 7s in the game already, so it was kind of proven. But yeah, so it was an 8, and that was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people have some choice words for Wukong 7, so you've cleared yourself a ball.
Hey, come on, Dagger's got a 7, it's fine.
That was solely on restoration.
Well, they picked it. It's on me for keeping it.
Were there any like cards, maybe different from like the like mill or the boost value matching, that you like really wanted to include in the deck but couldn't? I know Rob Davio always says you have to like kill your darlings with game design, like things you really want, but it just doesn't work. Were there any darlings that you had for Tomoe?
Well, not a lot in particular. I mean, a lot of these effects were already there. Oh yeah, I did have one good one. So Fearsome Strength used to be a 0 value attack that after combat dealt 3 damage to an adjacent opponent.
Okay.
So you could run away from it with skirmish, leap away, dash, whatever, and avoid the damage. But if you stayed, then you'd get smacked for 3. And that was just something that didn't really work. I got a lot of feedback from the other people in the contest Discord about like, yeah, I don't expect to see a 0 value attack and then get hit for 3. Not everybody has after combat movement, so it was really, really nasty against anybody like that. So I had to get rid of it and just settled for instead doing a swap on immediately, and then 1 point of damage after combat. I had another one in there too that was what was it? I'm trying to remember which one I changed now.
Like you said, you had so many.
I think I had an extra refuse to retreat. Used to, at one point it was a versatile that said just card values can't be modified during combat. Nobody can modify card values. So you and it was a 4. So you just shut down anybody. You shut down Sinbad. You shut down down, like it was like stasis, the
Yeah, from Jill.
stasis thing on Jill Trent,
Hmm.
and it was strong, but it wasn't fun.
Hmm.
So I got rid of that, and then we actually gave her more blues so that she had a bit of a line between, your defenses are the things that have a bit of a higher boost value. So if you need to catch somebody, you got to throw away a defense.
Hmm.
Uh, and then the attacks you pretty much want to use for hitting them because their boost values are so low. So yeah, we swapped those up. She had kind of an analog to scientific method at one point, which was just getting mad if she got hit by a sidekick, but that was no.
Okay.
It didn't really help, and it didn't really sell the ignoring sidekicks idea.
Hmm.
So got rid of that one. So there were a few things that had to go on the cutting room floor, and
Hmm.
mostly looking back, it's because yeah, they weren't really that good. I might have thought they were cool at the time. Oh, one other one too. Not not really specifically that the card didn't make it, but a worthy opponent used to be a print 5 that went down to 3 if you were attacking a sidekick.
They're kind of like the opposite of what it is now.
Yeah, it was the opposite way around. And my thinking in my math head was like, I want to make sure that her printed values have a certain distribution against heroes and a different distribution against sidekicks, so that you could guarantee that you had those 5s against somebody who was a hero, and they couldn't feint them away, right? But then it was, well, if you're a sidekick and you did play a feint against worthy opponent, then you're getting smacked with a 5.
Hmm.
And Brian was very patient and gracious about that, because I kept on saying like, no, but it's mathematical. This is why I wanted to be in there. He's like, please make the card have the correct interaction with fate. Please make the card have the correct interaction with fate. So I was trying some patience there, and Brian was really really good about that, and he was, just kept giving me the right answer until I took it,
Hmm.
and I really appreciate that.
The right interaction with fate.
Yeah.
That's
So
Brian.
there you go for all you fan deck people who like to put 5 value cards that the value goes down because you want it to be an anti cancel card. It's some decks it'll fit, I'm sure, theme wise, but as the general rule, this is what it was drilled into me that that's not how Restoration wants to do it.
I know. I remember seeing a fan deck for Deadpool, and he had a card called Faint This, and it was a
Mhm.
999 value attack. And it said during combat, the value of this card is like 1.
Yeah,
So it's kind of that
I
to
remember
extreme.
that one. Yeah, yeah, it's good.
So overall, throughout your process designing this character by yourself and with the guidance and wisdom of the people at Restoration, what have you learned about game design overall?
Oh boy. Well, like what you had just mentioned, like Kill Your Darlings is huge. Um, and getting other people's opinions and feedback, like who are involved with the game, who are involved with design, is very important, because a lot of the time you can get yourself tunnel vision,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's the same idea as Killing Your Darlings, really, but you won't know which ones to take out if you don't have somebody else there to tell you. Um, and just kind of, keeping at it, uh, trying different things. Sometimes you need to approach something from a different angle, and often simpler is better. Again, as somebody with a, a technical background, I want to jam more and more complexity on top of something. More rules text will make this card better, and if it's not working, I just haven't put enough conditions on it. That's not usually how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Simplification is often the better way of doing it, and will get you further. not to say that every once in a while, you every once in a while you get a confirmed suspicion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a giant paragraph of text on a card, and you need it to work. But more often than not, that's not the path to follow for everything. And the I guess the last biggest thing was just the idea that not all of your cards have to be loud. Not all of your effects have to just scream at somebody that this is awesome and the bestest thing ever in the entire universe, right? Um, you need quiet cards to set the tone so that the loud cards can be loud. And piercing shot, goes in the deck and it does its thing, gives you some hand advantage. And a lot of people don't necessarily think about it, or something like Deeds of Valor, which it's got some strong implications against big hitters like Jekyll and Hyde or Dracula, but other times it's mostly a two value and it's not doing much more than that for you on defense. Um, but they serve the purpose to provide a backdrop so that the big name cards can do what they do and sort of support that personality of the deck, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They let the 7 be a 7 and play it face up, and okay, here's your 7. What are you going to do about it?
If you could
So yeah,
change,
that idea that you're telling a story and you want to have high points and low points,
yeah,
and that it's important for balance to have areas where your character is weak as well as areas where they're strong. And the weaknesses of your design are almost, well, they're equally as important as the strengths of your design, to really telling the story and make people interested and invested in how it plays.
yeah, we need less Bigfoots where it's just like, yeah, I just got a bunch of big values.
here's here's my wall of value.
Yeah.
Well, that's a funny aside. You mentioned Bigfoot. Um, there's a story which I wasn't able to find a good English representation of it, but I've seen there's some really old art, Japanese art of Tomoe on horseback holding a pine tree, like she's gonna swing it at somebody. So knowing that this art exists, one of the things that I threw in there was like, well, do we want to give her log, right? Should she have larger than life, and you just have this art of her carrying this pine tree as a call out to the art on Bigfoot? It didn't make it in, but it was a fun thought anyway, since the character actually had something where you could do that.
Yeah, that sounds like Tomoe.
Hmm.
um, so I know like we have like physical copies of the set being sent out, but if you could change anything, any one thing about this character right now, what would it be? You got to change one little
Mm,
detail. You can say nothing if you
one
think
little
she's
detail.
perfect, but if you could change anything, what would it be?
Oh no, there's always something. Um, I've I've kind of thought for a while that she has the 7, but I think a lot of her other values, some of her other values are maybe a bit lower. So I was maybe I would put a Warrior's Way to a 3, but it can does a lot of ping damage potentially. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing that I had thought. Um, Maybe, yeah, I think that's really the big thing. Refuse to retreat. I might have done something a bit different with the discard, because it's on defense. If you have an adjacency requirement, it doesn't give melee an opportunity to step back.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear a lot of people's opinions ringing in my head about like that just punishes melee. It doesn't hurt ranged at all. It just punishes melee characters. I'm like, yes it does, and maybe I would have done something a bit different with that. I don't know what exactly, but but yeah, making it so that Melee had a way to potentially get out of the discard. As it stands now, it's kind of when she's fighting another range character, it's there to encourage her to get up in their face and get a benefit for being there and staying there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, unfortunately, Melee are going to suffer with the 2 discard regardless.
um, Poor Melee.
Yeah, that's the story of everything, right?
Mhm. Do you have
Except
any?
Sherlock's Melee. So, well, actually, no, he's technically not. He's like orbital satellite strike range
Yes.
because he'll he'll run away to another zone and then drop bombs on you from his hand.
Yeah. He doesn't fight. He just runs. So.
Yeah, he runs and then magically you get really really tired from him guessing what your cards are.
Mhm. As the designer of this deck, you've had your hands on it for arguably the longest out of anyone. Do you have any special secret tips or strategies or combos that you want people to know about that
Hmm.
you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah, I've got a few different some combos and some other things that people who are first looking at the deck might not necessarily consider, I guess. Number one, fearsome strength. Uh, Super fun if your opponent is hogging high ground on Hanging Gardens because you do the swap immediately. So you swap onto their high ground space, then you get the bonus for your attack.
Hey yo.
So you hit them back for 4. That's pretty simple. Um, One thing that you can do with it that some people don't always think of is she's ranged. You can shoot somebody further away with fearsome strength, swap spaces with somebody adjacent to you, and smack a one HP sidekick or somebody else. So you can still shoot the hero while kind of engaging with low health sidekicks by using the card. A lot of the people that I played it with, they just figure, well, I'm going to attack the guy that I'm swapping spaces with. It's like you don't really need to.
Mm-hmm.
uh, a warrior's way. It spells it out a little bit in the rules sheet for the set, but her special ability triggers kind of space by space with movement. So if you move somebody out of your zone, they take 1. Then you move them back into your zone with the second space of movement. Then you move them back out with the third. They'll take a second damage from her special ability. So that card has potential to do 2 points of effect damage from her special.
Mm-hmm.
5 against thousands. Just a word of warning: if you kill somebody with it, you can't use the ability to get it back.
Because they're not adjacent.
That's kind of the idea, is that if you waste this on a 1 HP sidekick, it's going away and you're not going to get another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you want to keep cycling them, you have to either lose the combat or use it on somebody who's not going to be defeated by the hit.
Like a hero.
Yeah, that's that's the whole idea. Um, Confront any demon or god. Everybody's been talking about that one on the League
I
Discord
love
there
this card.
as linchpin kind of destructive. Your hand goes down, my hand goes up to 1,000,000. So everybody knows how threes work. If you attack with it, you're more likely to lose the combat than you are if you defend with it. And that's really the trick. But people play Feint more often on defense, so um, yeah, it's a little bit tricky to get to work. But that's part of the fun, right? If it
Mm-hmm.
was super consistent, you it would probably be too good, I think. Fun note about that one: it actually used to be a scheme that required her to be adjacent to the opponent and then would just do the insight thing and draw a card. We changed it from that because I thought it was a little bit too, like, she wants to fight.
Mm-hmm.
Playing a scheme to drop cards is not fighting.
Yeah.
So make her engage in combat, and then that's what kind of Restoration came up with as a way to tailor that effect to a versatile and make it combat based.
Yeah. I like that change. I agree with it. This card, I love ripping things out of my opponent's hands and then just like, oh, you don't have any
Selected
defenses?
discard is great.
What?
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you for 7 now.
Yeah.
And one of my
Yeah, you were holding on. Hey Bayo, you were holding on to that equal of Grendel? Yeah, no. Now take the 7.
yeah, one of my first games with these characters, I played Confront Any Demon or God, got attacked by the Honor Guard, and then ripped out their last defense, and I like swatted one with like a fearsome strength and like killed it because it was already injured, and then I just dumped a 7 on the one at full health and just killed them both in the same turn. My opponent was like,
Yeah.
well, I probably just lose now.
That's what you got to do against Oda. Those guys are nasty.
So speaking of Oda, do you have any tips for people that want to win the in-box matchup as Tomoe?
Uh, Mainly what you just said. Don't be afraid to throw your witnesses at the honor guard. Don't be afraid to use your fearsome strength to get out of pins with the honor guard. And remember that Oda is the only one who will be able to feint on defense. So if you have any of your effects that you really want, and you figure they're essential to have them go off in that situation, like fearsome strength to get out of a pin, don't aim it at Oda and expect to be able to swap spaces with somebody after, because he's probably going to throw pragmatism at you and you won't get your effect. Same thing with the Warrior's Way. Usually I find I have to use it to break the pins or to move the honor guard away. I don't usually try to attack Oda with it for the same reason. If he cancels it, then you're down a 2, and his honor guard are probably up in your face and beating you up. So those are kind of the main things. But yeah, kill those honor guard as soon as you can. He's not nearly as hard to kill without them.
And do you have any tips for people that are trying to design their own decks? I know you touched a little bit on this earlier when we were talking about like darlings and collaboration, but any like other deck design tips you want to give people?
I think those are the main ones. Like, yeah, getting feedback is important. Getting eyes on your deck that aren't familiar with it. Once you get it to a point where you actually want to play test it, you think it's solid. If you have friends or if you have somebody who's willing to kind of play the deck blind, you can get a lot of good feedback from people that way, because you and anybody who's been involved with you while you were creating the character probably have some kind of implied ways that you do things in your head, and somebody who's totally fresh to the character, has never seen it before, may not take those things for granted and may find things that are ambiguous or things that could be interpreted a different way. And so that blind feedback is really important if you can get it. But really just, having fun, and in fan deck land, as long as you're having a good time and really keeping an eye on the theme that you want, and whoever you're going to play it with will have fun with it. That's really the key for that. Just have a good time and do your best.
And that being said, are you going to continue making fan decks, or has it like you've just peaked with Tomoe? There's no point in doing anything else. What are you do?
I've been having some fun doing some. I mean, I have a whole bunch that I made before that I still need to go back and play test. But I'll still keep doing some. My focus right now, when I have time, which I don't have a ton, but it has been Tales to Amaze and Unmatched Adventures. I want to start trying to make some villains and repurpose some of the existing characters and create villain versions for them. So I'm a huge Jekyll fan.
Mm-hmm.
And my first order of business is to try and create a villain version of Jekyll and Hyde that's just as weird and wonky in terms of consistency as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't quite know when they're going to be Jekyll, when they're going to be Hyde, what they need to do, but still keep all that theming, like keep Forever Hyde in there and have it, I don't know, eat Jekyll cards out of their deck or something like that. And a lot of the things people are used to, but it's it's going to be a while because yeah, work and family take up a lot of time these days. So I'll work on it when I can, but definitely still keeping involved with that. And the game is just simple enough that you don't need to do a ton of number crunching, and you can, through looking at the existing decks and that, you can feel pretty comfortable in a kind of short amount of time to know the basics of what you need
Mm-hmm.
just by looking at all nearly 50 characters that are already out there, and looking at the value distributions and the numbers. So to me, it's a lot more relaxing to do some design for this game than it would be for some other fan content that I've done for other games before, where it's complicated and you're breaking out the spreadsheets and everything else to say, like, okay, how does this relate to this, and what's the probability of that? Um, so yeah, I'll definitely keep doing some as I have time. It's still a lot of fun for me, and I still enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. And just anything else you want to say before we depart?
Just huge thanks again to Restoration for holding the contest. That was one of the coolest things that a company could do, and just for how welcoming they were to all of us, all the contest winners, all the runners up, and the amount of care that they took to keep us involved, all the information they showed us. You know, we got to see sort of wall to wall, as Justin says it, how the sausage is made, right? We got to see art briefs, we got to see sketch work, we got looks into production, miniatures in progress, their thoughts on how they design things. You know, everyone there has their own sort of methodology for how they do stuff. Do they start with card names first and then get the effects? Some of them decide, oh, I want to make a character that has this set of effects, and then they go about finding something that will fit that. And just giving all of that background and information, and it was like kind of a mini internship at a game company, really. uh, and it was just such an amazing experience, and I'm really thankful that they did that, and really happy that they kept us involved. Just super awesome people, real class act, 100%, and love it. Going to keep buying their games, going to keep playing their games and supporting them, because they're just a great bunch. And thanks to the community too. I mean, I wouldn't be on here talking to you if they didn't exist. And everybody who enjoys playing the game, everybody who loves talking about it. It's really energizing as somebody who helped create part of this to come on the Discord uh, for Restoration or for League, to look at the content that people like you, Taylor, and like Zero and everyone else is creating, and to know that there are people who are really excited about it, and people who really enjoy it and care about the game, care about the community. It makes it great to be a part of it, and I'm really thankful for all of you people too, and for what you have all done, and for everybody who's really engaged and involved. It makes it a ton of fun. Makes it really worthwhile to have been involved in creation of a set.
And you did an absolutely fantastic job creating this set, Jason.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That's, like I said, for a while, it's what are people going to think, biting the nails and everything. You know, you get kind of to, well, they're going to be what they're going to be, and when it's already in production, but you still have that little thing in the back of your head, like, well, what are they actually going to say? Will they show up on a list somewhere in, Winter of Champions, or or Summer of Legends. We'll see. That's going to be the next fun thing to watch is when it shows up in League and all those things.
Well, I will certainly be making an effort to make sure that this character shows up in my matches.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your thoughts and your time. Thanks for coming on
Yeah,
the
thank
channel.
you, Taylor. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy this format, and it's just really relaxing to hang out and chat about the character a bit and everything that went on to go into it.